Hey, disturbing listeners, 90 Day Fiancé bears all. Let's watch.
I love you, Darcey.
I love you too, Jesse.
Let me do it. I don't feel...
What?
No, but let me do at least the navigation.
You have to. I can't.
Yeah,
I'm driving.
that's what I'm saying. Like, so don't touch the phone, please.
I'm not touching.
All right, so on Bears All, which was aired a while ago, a number of months ago, maybe 5 or 6 months, they're going back in time and showing us some clips that weren't included on the show. You really have to wonder what clips were left on the cutting room floor. And at least I don't remember seeing this scene. It was a while ago that I watched these two, so I don't remember. But I am reminded of how much bickering they engaged in. How he would have this tone with her, like they're talking about navigating, and the way he, instead of saying, "Hey, would you like me to navigate?" he's like, "You need to let me navigate. There's something wrong." You know, his tone of voice was just so belittling, I think. And for Darcey, she doesn't take kindly to that. Obviously, it hurts her feelings. But instead of saying, "Hey," but sometimes she would say something, "Hey, that kind of hurts my feelings. Could you just say it nicer?" Instead, it's bickering time, and that's usually what people will do. But yeah, I'm reminded of how much, almost constantly, they were bickering. It was almost like they couldn't talk about anything without fighting about it. If I remember right.
Touching the phone.
All right, yeah, you were. Okay.
No, I was not touching
not anymore.
the phone. What are you talking about? I'm not touching the phone.
Not anymore.
I moved it so I could see it.
Yeah. I'm not gonna argue, Darcey.
I'm not gonna argue
you wanna
either.
Lie, fine, but
I'm
don't
not
touch
lying.
the phone.
I think you need to stop talking.
I will say that as a couples therapist and as a human being, I will say that most people have these kinds of fights. People will shame themselves for this because they think there's something weird about them, but it's universal that couples bicker over nothing. And people will come to me and they'll be like, "I kind of feel like we're fighting about nothing." And I'll be like, "Well, that's 90% of people." Often research or an article will come out and say people fight about kids and about money and about sex. And those are the topics, but not, I think, what really people are fighting about. Usually what's happening are these micro hurts that are happening where he was frustrated because they were lost or having a hard time finding where they're going. And he's having mounting distress, and the way that he deals with it, seemingly, Jesse, is to take control and to put down. He feels bad, and people will do this, and there's a personality type. Sometimes it's narcissism, sometimes it's other things, where when those individuals feel distress, they will look to blame somebody. You might have someone like this in your life. You might be like this, actually, where you can't find the vacuum cleaner and you immediately turn to your partner, "But where's the vacuum cleaner?" Instead of like, "I wonder where the vacuum cleaner is." And half the time, if not more, you or the narcissistic person was the one or the person who barks at others. It's not always narcissism, but they will find that they were the ones, or it was some other innocent thing. But it's this knee-jerk reaction of, "I feel bad, it must be someone's fault, and before I even think, I'm going to blame someone else." Jesse seems to do that. I'm not diagnosing him, of course, because I literally have no idea what his personality is like, really, because I would have to treat him. But I remember he seemed to do that, and he seemed to do this here. And let's rewind this, because it's interesting to get a refresher on their relationship, because I think it actually pertains to Darcey's current psychology and reactivity. So let's rewind.
I love you, Darcey.
I love you too, Jesse.
Let me do it. I don't feel...
What?
No, but let me do at least the navigation.
You have to. I can't.
Yeah,
I'm driving.
that's what I'm saying. Like, so don't
what's
touch the phone, please.
I'm not touching the phone.
All right, yeah, you were. Okay.
No, I was not touching
Not anymore.
the phone. What are you talking about? I'm not
After rewatching, Darcey isn't helping. She, at the very beginning of Jesse's entry into this topic, he wasn't barking at her, but and she's stressed out. So I think they're both playing into it. From my memory, though, Jesse was more often the one that would switch the conversation into a negative place. But I don't know, this one looks like they're, again, let's rewind. And this is useful for all of us, not necessarily for them, because this is in the past, but for us. when we think about our tone of voice, I can't tell you how many times I'm talking with clients about the tone of their voice and how many times I'm thinking about myself, about the tone of my voice. It's critical. Almost no one is aware of how their tone comes across to other people. If you find that other people seem to be overreacting to you when you're just like, oh, I was just asking where the vacuum cleaner was, 99% of the time, it's your tone. It's your fault. And you're not aware of it. You're not trying to sound belittling or angry or triggering or overly upset or blaming or whatever it is. But you're coming across that way. One of the best ways to evaluate your own tone is to think about your siblings and your parents. If you feel like they had tone with others and you probably learned that and also have tone with others. You out there who have partners, some of them might be sitting right next to you right now. I bet you anything, the tone you hear from your partner, you have heard from their extended family, from your partner's parents and siblings and stuff. There's a tone culture that is passed down through the generations, through families. And when you're the recipient of it in your family, you don't like it. You're like, oh, that feels belittling. It feels hurtful, whatever. But we absorb that. You rinse and repeat that over and over again from 0 to 20 years old. And that's just now how you talk, especially when you're upset. So the higher the tone problem in your family, the higher your tone problem is. So they're having this kind of fight, which I have to say is just very common. Now, the frequency and the fact that it never gets resolved, and the way that it kind of ends, if I remember right, the way that their fights would end would be that Jesse would be talking down to Darcey, and Darcey would just be upset and not know what to say and feel belittled. Let's watch.
Touching the phone.
Not anymore.
I moved it so I could see it.
Yeah. I'm not gonna argue, Darcey.
I'm not gonna argue
You wanna
either.
lie, fine, but
I'm
don't
not
touch the phone.
lying. I think you need to stop talking.
Oh, I will.
Hey,
What's
Jesse.
up, Sean?
Yeah. So what they were fighting about was he was like, oh, I guess I need to start navigating. And she says to him, fine, navigate. And he's like, well, you keep touching the phone. She's like, I'm not touching the phone, because his tone sounds accusatory. It wasn't over the top accusatory, and her defensiveness is a little bit commensurate, I think, with the context. And then he's like, yeah, you're lying. You're always touching the phone. She's like, I'm not touching the phone. Navigate, And I don't know, it's just interesting to be reminded about their fights. Remember that, the alcohol thing and the shoe throwing thing and the cutting on the bias thing. It was just like they could never. And the way that I like to phrase it with my couples is making requests. Usually in couples, conflicts occur when we're trying to make a request. So we're saying, hey, could you please navigate? Or, hey, could you please have a different tone? And we don't know how to make that request in a way that comes across as non-triggering to the other person. And so what we'll do is we'll say, well, you don't have to have tone with me. Or, where's the frickin' vacuum? You're always misplacing things. In that criticism and in that tone is a request of just like, hey, could you help me with this? And that's usually what I'm trying to get people to do more directly of, okay, I'm hearing a request in there. Can you make a request of your partner? And it sounds so like, I don't know, elementary. And when people make their requests, they're like, oh yeah, I guess this is what I'm asking. Why don't I ask this? Well, it's because we all have been rejected for our requests. We've made requests of our family members, people at school, past partners, people at work. We've asked for things directly. Can I have a raise? Can you be nice to me? Can you pay attention to me? And we've been rejected a lot, but depending, degree, there's a matter of degree, but all of us have been rejected. And so it's much safer to just bark at someone, right? To just yell or to criticize or to avoid or passive aggressively get back at someone than to just directly say, hey, could you help me with this? Because if we bark at someone and they don't give us what we want, then at least we feel powerful while we're being rejected. But when we ask kindly, can you please do this? And then we get rejected, we're not only feeling rejected, but we also feel foolish and like we're small because we were asking please, and then we felt metaphorically slapped across the face. But that worry is what causes us to bark, which causes people not to give us not to meet our requests and not even to know what we really want. So anyway, we're going to get an interview with Jesse.
You, Jesse. Now we want to get your response to what she said. Let's take a look. You know, you were saying that you thought Jesse had a secret life. What did you mean by that?
So there was moments of kind of feeling uncomfortable where he lived. He had like these little cameras.
Right. I remember when this was happening, and I thought, cameras. And then there was a little bit more detail, and it sounded like he had indoor security cameras, which a lot of people have these days for various reasons, especially maybe if you're famous and people break into your place or something. I suppose you could use them in a nefarious way, but if they're out in the open and you know they're there, and the thing that I was reacting to at the time to Darcey is if she felt uncomfortable, she should have just said, could we like turn the cameras around or turn them off when I'm home? Because I just don't want to be spied on all the time. That's totally reasonable. And so I didn't really understand this situation. I'm guessing that Jesse's going to say, yeah, I have an indoor security camera. It's not a big deal. But I think Darcey was maybe looking for something to criticize him about. And, and I find that a lot of these shows do this sort of thing where, especially the Darcey Stacey world, like with Georgie, for example, the money in the sock thing, it's like, oh, there's just something really weird. Like he has this money. And the way they say it and the way everyone reacts to it, Stacey and the friends, you're like, yeah, that is weird. He has money in a sock. It's bizarre. It's dangerous. It's scary. He's a psychopath. And then you start thinking, you're like, well, did you ask him? Like maybe he just now, and people would comment below saying like where Georgie is from, you couldn't depend on the banks before. Maybe you can now, but you couldn't years past. And a lot of people just became accustomed to holding on to cash, especially if you need cash to suddenly get something, like you can't depend on the banks anyway. And it was only $1,400. And I know that's, a fair amount of money, but to them, it's probably not that much. Anyway, point is that there's this, I think, undifferentiated lens that Darcey and Stacey look through. And instead of saying, I don't like Jesse because of the way he treated me, and people will do this sometimes. They'll feel like insecure about their take on something. They're unsure about how they feel, and they'll be mistreated, and they don't know how to evaluate it, or they don't know if it's okay to say. So they'll kind of make up things to latch on to present as data to outsiders that there's something wrong with that. They're trying to make a case that there's something wrong with that person. And instead of saying, well, you weren't really there and it's going to be hard for me to explain it, but we got in a lot of fights and my perception was he just didn't really seem to care about my feelings, but I don't know. That's a much more differentiated way of putting it, right? You're tentative, you're more owning of your side of it potentially, I think. But you're worried that the person listening is going to say, well, I'm a little skeptical of that, especially if you've had that happen in your past. And so you start grabbing at things to complain about, like security cameras or money in a sock or something. And I'll tell you, as a professor, I get evaluated almost every month. The students will fill out these anonymous feedback forms, and I'll tell you, I'll tell you sometimes that my mood can be determined by how many likes I get on these videos or how many patrons we have, which is true. And the American refrain is, I don't care about people's feelings. Everyone cares about how they're being seen. Now, in some contexts, we might care a little less. Like if I'm trying to cook and someone's saying you're a terrible cook, I don't have self-esteem in how I'm a cook, but I do have self-esteem in myself as a podcaster and a YouTuber. And I have a lot of self-esteem wrapped up in my ability to be a professor. And when a student doesn't like me for whatever reason, it is a stab to the heart. They deserve to not like me if they don't want to like me, and they deserve to write that on an evaluation. I'll tell you that I pride myself in the fact that I work really hard as a professor to give them a good service. In fact, I was teaching the other day, and the students were asking me at the beginning of the quarter, they were saying, how responsive are you? Can I reach out to you and will you get back to me? And I said, how fast will you get back to me? And I'm under the impression that a lot of my colleagues at the university, they'll say like, well, 24, 72 hours maybe. And a lot of professors don't get back to anyone, because I'll email my colleagues. They won't even get back to me. And I'm one of those people, like, every day, inbox zero, every day. And I have, work emails and da-da-da. I'm very, I'm good at some things and I'm bad at others. One of the things I'm good at is inbox zero every day. I get rid of everything and I respond to everyone, even if it's just a sentence. Anyway, so with my students, and I told them, I'm often sitting in front of my computer right here, and if you email me, I'll probably get back to you within a minute because you're on my priority list. Why? Because you're spending a lot of money on trying to become a therapist at this university, and I am delivering a service. You are paying the university is paying me. I'm like your waiter at a restaurant. I'm interested in you getting the service that you deserve, and so I'm going to get back to you as soon as possible. And half the students, they just had this face like, did he just say that we deserve a good service at this university? It's just not an attitude that professors often have. And so for that reason, the reason why I do that, and because I've been a professor for 25 years, is because when a student doesn't like me as a professor, it really cuts to the core. And so, this is all this, and I was program director for a long time as well, and so I was the boss of all the other professors, and so I would read all the evaluations of the professors, and when students would have an uprising against a professor, I'd have to step in and help out, with the uprising. It would happen. And one of the things that I found, this is all to say, one of the things I would find is that the complaints that people write down about their professors never really encapsulated what their real complaint was. Often when I'd get these evaluations, I would hear rumblings in a certain class, we don't like this professor. I would get the feedback, I would talk to the professor, I'd talk to students, and at the end of the process, I almost all the time, 95% of the time, I would discover that there was something about the teacher that was making the students feel unsafe about something, whether it's an assignment or a viewpoint or something. There was something about the environment emotionally that felt unsafe to the students. The students felt like they couldn't speak out, they couldn't oppose the instructor, they couldn't be wrong, they didn't know the assignment that well because it wasn't explained to them very well, they were terrified they're going to flunk the class. It's always about safety and fear. And a little bit of fear is okay. I don't operate that way. I've been in graduate school a long time. I have 2 master's degrees and a doctorate, and a bachelor's degree. And so I've had a lot of professors, and a lot of them have been terrible, and a lot of them purposely try to scare the students. And I find that to just be like one of the worst abuses of power. I mean, especially in my field, the students in my class, they're desperate. They're paying, $100,000 or $50,000 to $100,000 and spending 3 to 4 years of their life training to become a therapist so that they can help other human beings. Why do I want to stand in their way? Why do I want to hinder that? I want to help. It's such a noble thing that they're doing. They have the money and they have the time and they could do anything, but instead of doing some capitalistic thing, they're trying to give back to society. And so, and the beginning of one's career, you're either working for nothing because you're an intern, you're actually paying to be a therapist in the beginning, or you're getting paid almost nothing. Therapists don't get paid that much in the beginning of their career. They can make a lot. Anyway, point is that I would come in and I would find that the students would have this general unsafety that they felt. But instead of saying that, because I think the students don't feel that they can because it's too amorphous, they'll latch on to these little details that the professor did that they think are examples of how the professor did something wrong. they would say things like, the syllabus was unclear in this one sentence. And of course, that is absolutely a problem and needs to be addressed. But it didn't encapsulate the problem as it was. You know, like for me, when I'm teaching a class, I might have a sentence or two in the syllabus that is, you know, a little ambiguous, but there's not an uprising because I spent a lot of time trying to make the students feel safe and heard and understood, and you know, so that they understand how to do things and they are in the groove. That's always my thing. I'm going to try to get students into the groove where they're learning and they're pushing themselves, and you know, and they're working hard, and in order to get them into that groove, they have to be free of anxiety. They have to know what they're doing. They have to know what I want from them. Anyway, and some professors don't do that, and they're just like, well, you're just going to have to figure it out. And I'm just like, come on. Anyway, so with Darcey, I wonder if she doesn't feel confident enough or trusting enough in other people to believe her, when she's just like, I just don't feel right. There's something about this that doesn't, I don't know what it is exactly, but I just don't feel good. I don't feel happy. I don't feel loved. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's this. Maybe instead of that, it's money. Look at the money in the sock. It's the security cameras in the thing. Because we all saw the relationship between Darcey and Jesse and know that there were concrete things that we can point to that we saw. God knows what went on behind the scenes, that Darcey could say, this was a bad relationship for these 5 reasons. Instead, it's like maybe she doesn't feel she can say that because she doesn't trust other people, so she identifies these little anyway, let's hear what Jesse says. Wow, there were tangents upon tangents in my
his way of keeping his house secure or whatever.
Yeah.
But I just always felt kind of looked at or spied on.
Yeah.
There was one near his bed, one near the kitchen. I remember one time I had put a little towel over the one near the kitchen, and like a second later, he's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Like, take that towel off." I was like, "Wow, like, okay."
And Jesse has a kind of an eclectic style. Would you call it that?
It was just, he liked robes. I remember that. He liked short, silky ones. He kind of gifted me a robe, but
yeah, and that was that other detail that she gave is, yeah, he liked robes, and it's like, who doesn't like a good robe? I like a good robe. There's some kind of, I don't know, feminine accusation, I think, in there. And then she's like, yeah, and he gifted me a robe. I'm guessing that when he gave her a robe, in the moment, because she liked Jesse at the time, she was like, oh my God, thank you so much. But again, looking back, it's like she's cherry picking these little details that she thinks are going to resonate with other people, instead of just saying, he abused me mentally and emotionally. I mean, did you see there were things behind it. He made me feel small. He made me feel worthless. I was crying myself to sleep every night. I was desperately just trying to please him all the time. Like, why not those details? I don't know. Maybe the producers are telling her to say these other things. I don't know. Let's see what he says.
it felt like it was like used.
No, he didn't give you a used robe.
Yeah, it was like a pink fuzzy robe.
So I'm quite positive that Jesse is going to deny all this, and we're not going to know who's telling the truth. He's going to say she's lying. It was never like that. And we're just never going to know. I'm just going to make that prediction.
My dear, it's not the first time she makes up something, right?
And the part about the cameras in the bedroom, around the place, why would she say that?
There's a surveillance camera. There's a surveillance camera that is not in the bedroom, that isn't pointed at the front door.
Right. I tend to believe Jesse in this situation. I can't know, but he's saying essentially there's one camera and it's pointed toward the door and it's for security. It's not in the bedroom. It's not in the bathroom. Yeah, that would be my guess.
Yeah. Well, I think that a lot of people can identify with having cameras around the house, but the fact that there was, talk of cameras in the bedroom.
Sweetheart, like I said, this is not the first thing she makes up.
Right. I mean, if you listen to the way Darcey was saying it, it'd be one thing if she said, so I saw some cameras, and this would be more believable if she said something like this. If she said that there was a camera and it was pointed toward the door, and I thought, well, that camera makes sense. But then I saw a camera in the bedroom, and I thought, why do you have a camera in the bedroom? And I even said something to him, and he said, well, it's for security. And I thought, do you really, some detail to it instead of, I don't know, there's just kind of like cameras around. Like the way she said it, it's just like, I don't know, it just seemed kind of weird that he had cameras. And there isn't detail there. Now, I can't detect if someone is stretching the truth or not, but I would imagine that Jesse is like the one that's telling the truth here in terms of the scope, right? He's like, yeah, I have one camera, it's pointing at the door, big deal.
So I'm not even surprised.
Okay. So a used robe with a hole in it, not true.
No, of course not.
Okay.
Well, now that one, people on the internet, by the way, and every once in a while I'll remind it, sometimes I'll see videos being, because I watch YouTube, and I'll see videos being suggested to me. They'll be like, a body language expert breaks down the lies of 90 Day Fiancé. No. Or eye movement specialist figures out if someone's lying as a politician. No. Science, we as, in psychology have been looking for decades to evaluate if we can discover if there's even a slight tendency to lie, given certain body language or certain ways of writing or eye movement or the way, the cadence of what you're saying. And there's a lot of research on it. Like, people tend to speak more slowly, or they respond more slowly when they're lying. But just the fact that someone takes a pause, it doesn't necessarily mean they're lying. It just means that when people lie, on average, there tends to be a little bit more time between the end of your question and their response. But can someone lie very quickly? Absolutely. And so I want to be clear that I can't know if people are lying. And as a therapist, particularly when I worked with teenagers a lot, I don't work with teens anymore, but I did in the beginning of my career. There was a lot of talk in families about kids lying, teenagers lying, and parents pressuring me to figure out if the kid is lying. And that was never my job, but sometimes it was relevant to figure out, like, what's going on here. And I, in the beginning, would try to figure out if people are lying. And over time, I was just like, I can't know. And that's just not my job. I guess, for investigators, detectives, they are tasked with trying to figure out if someone's lying through interrogation techniques and this kind of thing. Anyway, so put that just that. But Jesse is saying, Sean's asking, what about the rope? So when Sean asked him about the camera, he's like, no, he's lying. Darcey's lying about it. I have one camera. It's pointed at the door. Okay, so that sounded credible to me, given what we hear from Darcey, given what we hear from him. She had a story about he had all these robes all the time, and I'm like, big deal. I'm sure, Darcey, you have a lot of fashion things around the house. Like, that's the sort of people you hang out with. So I don't understand the accusation. He has a lot of robes, big deal. And then he gifted you a robe, and you saw a hole in the armpit and interpreted that as it's a used robe, even though you didn't know if it was a used robe. And so then Sean asks him, now, might it have been used? Maybe, but Sean asks Jesse about the robe, and then Jesse says, that's a lie. That's all he says. He doesn't give any detail. That lends itself to the possibility that there is some truth maybe to what Darcey was saying, and Jesse just doesn't want to get into it, because if he does, he has to say more lies or get more scrutiny or something about that. I don't know. But I will say that having a lot of robes, there's nothing wrong with that. And even gifting someone a used robe, if you wash it, I don't know. It's not like an undergarment, or I guess it kind of is an undergarment. But anyway, I wouldn't say it's this massive transgression, especially compared to the transgressions that they actually did to each other verbally and physically and emotionally, particularly him to her. So, on this scale of things that at least we saw, I would put gifting her a used robe, possibly, it's a possible used robe. I would put that at like 95 out of, on the ranking. There are 94 other things that are more significant and painful that Darcey went through in that relationship. Anyway. All right, well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really, really do.